Greetings, I'm Rob Chapman.
I'm the captain.
And we're in the sunny, beautiful, wonderful Guildfordshire land in England, where Andertons is also situated.
We certainly are.
Bringing you the code.
For your oral delectation,
Yes.
today we're demonstrating two things really. We're showing you a very, very cool new product from Marshall called Code, and we're showing you in its Bambino format, which is the little 25 watt code, which if Rob leans away from me, you might just see, or perhaps we'll use a sweep over, I don't know. It's very small and very
Code.
pretty.
Conform or die eternally. Is that what it was?
I don't know. Well, I do know that Code is a reference to the code breakers from the war that worked out of Bletchley to discover the Enigma code or something like that.
Yes.
Because Marshall, that's where Marshall are, in Bletchley. And so what is Code? Code is a digital modelling amplifier from Marshall that uses a bunch of different preamp models and power amp models and cabinet modules. Has a ton of effects built in. It can play back your iTunes library. It has a tuner on board, all kinds of stuff. Very, very easy, cool to use, and we're going to show you that. Comes in currently 4 different formats. A little 25 watt 1x10 combo.
A 50 watt one?
50 watt 112, 100 watt 212, and 100 watt head.
Nice.
And price wise ranges from about 160, 170 pounds up to about 500 pounds if you want the full half stack.
Let's cut to the nitty gritty, Lee. So to begin with, I'm using a Chapman ML.
What?
I'm using an ML.
Didn't you bring any good guitars?
I'm sorry. I haven't got one of these. I've always wanted one, and whenever I get the opportunity to use one, I do. Let's start by adjusting all these gubbins.
So let's show you
for
one.
For example, volume, it might be a bit louder than that. So you can see via the magic of Bluetooth, Bluetooth, it's operating the amplifier.
You're going to see a bunch of screens here with a bunch of knobs and buttons on them. Let's start with amps. This is what we call our home page. And the home page is where you can adjust the sort of the bass, middle and treble and the noise gate threshold, volume and gain of whichever amp you have set up. So there is what's called a library. A library is where you would store, once you've created a patch that you like, you can store them.
Do you remember libraries? I remember libraries.
Yeah, the one in Guildford is still open, actually, to be honest with you.
Is it really?
Yeah, I mean, although, let's be honest with you, when did I last go and rent a book?
Last book I rented, Stig of the Dump.
Yeah, Stig of the Dump. It must have been when I was at school.
Yeah.
Yeah, gosh. Anyway. So, this is probably the place where you are going to spend the most time, which is where you choose your basic setting.
Well, I'm using a 50s British right now because that's how I felt. But why don't we change to something a little bit more exciting for some of the younger viewers?
I should just point out at this time, the last time Marshall were in the sort of digital modelling realm, they had a product called JMD, which was a slightly more pro-end product than this, was sort of like half valve, half modelling.
Yes.
But all the models in it were based on old Marshall amplifiers. With Code, this is the first time Marshall have kind of acknowledged that
other things exist.
Other people make good amps too. So you've got, Fender and Boogie and Vox and such like models in here that you can call up. They don't call them that as such, but if you went to American Clean, for example, that's going to be very much a Fendery vibe. So the idea is you choose a preamp you like, you choose a power amp you like, and you choose a cabinet for it to go through. I know on previous videos there's been some sort of question really about, do you have cabinet modeling when you're using a guitar speaker? And certainly I think if you're recording, and you would, and if there's an argument on other products that you perhaps wouldn't use the cabinet emulator if using a cabinet. In this, the cabinet emulation here is really just trying to re-EQ the sound to give that sense of either airiness or depth that you might get out of some cabinets.
You know what? It's a really cool
punch out of other cabinets.
It's a really cool experimental tool to kind of say, well, what does this head sound like with this cab when you don't own all the gear? You know.
So there's a nice Fendery kind of sound. Actually, funnily enough, the other video that I did a video with Danish Pete a few weeks back where we used the 50 watt version of this, and we did kind of focus largely on the cleany, kind of slightly broken up sort of vintage sounds, because I knew I'd be doing a video with you soon where we could focus more on the more modern driven tones. So let's focus more on modern drive now.
Well, why don't we change the amplifier to something a little bit more
dirty.
Yeah. Oh, that's what they've got.
Silver Jubilee.
Well, we just used that, didn't we? Let's just do
great.
that. Do that again.
Hang on. Do you want this through you want this really through like a Marshall-y kind of power section?
Yeah.
And through a sort of a 412 vintage 30 loaded cab. Let's see. And do we probably need a bit more gain? But
let's just start. Crank the gain, Lee. Does all that.
You see the little diddy numbers that I'm pointing at on sort of close-up cam here? That's showing you what was the setting for that parameter before I started editing it. So if you're going, oh, do you know what, I like the sound I had before, you've got a nice little handy reminder as to where it was before you started fiddling.
Should we change the amplifier to something else that's dirty but different and then add a bit of an effect?
American Overdrive will go more boogie.
Okay, well let's do that. That's not a Marshall sound.
Let's change it to, again, a sort of an American overdriven power amp section. And that's beautiful.
And then should we change the effects?
Yeah,
Can you add a delay for me?
I can indeed. Actually, that was the button I wanted to do to add delay. There you go. Great. Here's like an amp that kind of wouldn't really exist. So we've got a crunchy American preamp tone with a vintage Marshall 30 watt power amp tone. Might just be a tiny smidgen loud, but let's just...
Wow, that's a nice sound.
So let's go to the effects bank, show you what you can do here. Super, super easy. 4 types of effect.
Here's all of them off.
Pedal, kind of like distortion or compression pedals. Modulation pedals, where all your choruses and tremolos and stuff like that. Delays, echoes, and reverbs. And you can have them all on, or any combination. Do first actually, if I just back some of the gain off this amplifier, and then we'll sort of simulate sort of adding a distortion pedal in front of it. So is that a relatively crunchy clean tone?
Well, yeah.
So we would hit the distortion. Choose the type. We've got loads of types: compressions, pitch shifters, distortions, auto wahs. So we're going to choose distortion. We choose the type of pedal. We've got a governor, an overdrive, or a distortion. Just go governor. And if I now switch it on and off, you can kind of hear the difference. use. Reverb, I'm just going to jump down to the bottom here because I like the effect. Really, really easy again. Choose the type of reverb. Let's say we want a hall reverb. Got all the parameters you. We've got a delay section here again, so I can choose. We've got vintage delay, multi delays, reverse delays, studio delays.
To studio, make it a bit longer.
Like that. And we can
Nice.
Have a little bit more repeats here. Tons and tons of modulation effects. So if we switch this on, we've got chorus, flanger, phaser, tremolo. So look,
It does everything, Lee.
there's tons and tons of things in here that we could carry on noodling around with. But, all right, a couple of other things I can show you. It has what's called a playback menu. I don't know what's in Rob's iTunes library, but the idea being you can import whatever you want from his iTunes library, or if you're using Android, which it also works on, whatever the Android version of an iTunes library is. Okay, so there's your little kind of rundown of what you can do with the app. It's worth mentioning, if you don't own any kind of a smartphone, everything that we've done on the app you can
Do it on the thing.
do on the amplifier. There's a sweep of the top of the amp going across the screen now. And what else didn't we mention here? It has a tuner built into it.
Yeah.
You can save all your patches. You can even save the patches to the phone, so that if you turn up to a friend's house who has a code amplifier,
You can corrupt his amplifier with your own sounds.
use your patches into his code amplifier. Now, the lamp behind me is from Marshall's long-standing and much-loved solid-state range called MG. And MG isn't being discontinued. It's very much being run alongside code to give you guys a choice as to which is the right amp for you.
I felt like there should have been a little jingle then. Which is the right amp? Which is the right amp? Which is the right amp for you?
So the idea of MG always has been that it's basically a really, really simple to use solid state amplifier that you get a clean sound and a distortion sound on it. And some of the models have no reverb at all. The one behind me has reverb, and a couple of the models have like chorus and delay built into them too. But they're non-programmable. Actually, I should just clarify there is a foot switch you can buy for them that allows you to store some sounds. But on their own, they're a non-programmable, just solid state sounding amp. And I've got the 15 with reverb behind me.
How many watts is mine?
25.
25.
So, oh.
That's because your cable's not pushed all the way in, bro.
So, and it sounds like this. It doesn't have a tuner built in.
The code, straight away.
And distortion-wise, I don't know how loud this is actually. I can probably afford to be a bit louder. So, you know, it sounds okay. It's a little bit cheaper than code, but not drastically cheaper than code. And it's again, it's not really designed to be, one is not designed to be better or worse or anything like that. It's simply designed for you to choose which is the best one for you. So what we thought we'd do is kind of have a bit of a jam. Maybe we'll switch guitars as we're kind of going through.
My gem then?
Yeah, well, let's just use all. Yeah, because people have heard that one, haven't they?
I'm going to set this to a JVM and have a JVM gem.
Cool. So, and you can decide whilst we're having the jam kind of which tone you prefer. And in terms of knobs and buttons, if you're sort of thinking, do you know what, that just freaks me out, then maybe this is for you. And if you're thinking, God, I love all the other things I can do. I mean, I should tell you, I'll put a link in the description below so that you can read more about Code. But you know, in a nutshell, it's got a USB recording interface built into it. It's got a headphone socket. You can have an auxiliary.
Jam along with your tunes and things.
Yeah, you can use it. You can just run your backing tracks through there if you want to. It's got tons and tons of stuff. And as I said, there's a whole range, as there is with MG. You know, both the ranges go from little amplifiers up to big amplifiers, so you can have a look.
It's exciting times for Marshall. It's a nice change.
I like Code.
And it's fairly affordable, and that's really cool.
Yes, I like Code. Prices wise, did we talk prices?
No.
I think, so it starts from about 160 for the smallest one and ends up at about £500 for the half stack, the 100-watt half stack. But again, I'll put a link in the description below so you can find out more
Out of
about
interest,
them.
how much does my floral blue gem cost?
They're about £1,000, aren't
I thought
they?
so. Good that I'm using a good match of affordable guitar with affordable amplifiers.
Oh, you always get shot for that, don't you?
I do. But we're both blue again.
I've had to change guitar because Rob's in the tuning on that, and that's
Sorry.
in E flat,
Well, I have been Rob Chapman.
There you go. Hope you find this useful. Just to recap again, you got Code, that what Rob was playing. MG is what I'm playing. They're both a current series, so you know, you choose which you think fits you best. I've got to say, I'm a big fan of both of them. I like the simplicity of the MG, and I like all the flexibility of the Code. So it's you know, it's a dilemma. But anyway, as Rob says, I've been the captain.
I'm Chappers.
See you
See you
next
later,
time.
guys.
Babino.